How do you view the work that you feel like needs to be done when it comes to budget fiscal issues? Do you see it as you need to come up with sort of a solution on a temporary basis until the price of oil goes back up, until we can get more oil in the pipeline, or do you see it as more, you know, there's a pretty consistent trend with the throughput, that we need to start thinking about sort of more of a structural change, whether it's in the way that we get money or the way that we spend money?
A little bit of both. Probably more on the. I don't see what we're doing all of a sudden turning around if the price of oil goes back up again. I mean, I think we're going to make some changes that, quite honestly, I believe were necessary at $100 oil, and so they're really necessary at $45 oil. So, so I don't see that in our administration that bouncing back up again. What might change is some of the projects that we put on hold could sort of grow legs at a later time if we could afford it, but right now we can't. So that's the only thing I see
projects,
on the mega project. That's the only thing I really see that could come back to life, but not necessarily regrowing government back to where it has grown to at this point.
What about with the operating budget? You talked a little bit about that during your campaign and some of the cuts that you wanted to see, and then we've seen different numbers from you. You had asked for proposals for 5% and 8% reductions in spending from your department heads. The Senate president threw out the number of 20. He threw out maybe 20% as a amount that he wanted to see the deficit reduced this year. I mean, tell us about sort of how you're thinking about the scale of the reductions that need to be made.
Well, we're looking at certainly at the 5 and the 8 this year, knowing that it's going to be what we want to have is a sort of a long-term plan on bringing us into the right size. We don't think you can do it all in the first year, or maybe in the second year, but there has to. We believe there needs to be a goal out there to show where we're going to be in 3 years or 4 years or 5 years. I heard some people say 5 years, some said 3 years. It's really all about the degree of the slope, and everybody wants a safe landing. We don't want to go down too steep. We don't want to be the driver of putting Alaska into any sort of a recession of some sort. Again, we're in a very different situation. You hear a lot of analogies to the 80s.
Yeah.
And what we look at is how we're different now than we were in the 80s. I know we weren't in the huge buildup in the housing market that we were then. It was still the big buildup from quite honestly from the end of the building of TAPS. There are a lot of things going on that we're in a different economy now. So we don't think we're going to do that, but we're very sensitive to not doing that.
But one of the questions is if you make 5 or 8% cuts this year, and then that's repeated next year when presumably it's harder. If things don't change with the oil prices, that doesn't seem like a steep enough reduction to sort of we have a lot of money in reserves right now, but that could be exhausted fairly quickly.
Right.
So do you see those cuts being even bigger next year if things don't change?
They could be. We have to look at this on a year by year. I mean, we want to have a long term, like a 3 to 5 year plan. But any particular year could be modified based upon what happens on the price of oil. But we have to assume it's going to stay pretty close to where it is right now for at least the next couple of years. So that's what we're planning on. And if we're off and it raises, comes up higher, then that would be better news. But we can't assume that.